LAN Infotech CEO Michael Goldstein is here to discuss integration news from Carbonite and Webroot and upgrades coming to Kaseya products. Plus, ChannelPro recognizes vets in the channel and a special guest interview with Kaseya CEO Fred Voccola on coronavirus's impact on Kaseya's partners. It's ChannelPro Weekly, episode 147, $1 Million Sub. Hello, everyone. Welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode 147. My name is Matt Wedlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine program for you, the MSPs, the VARs, the integrators, the MSSPs, the IT consultants. If you're wondering if you're in the right spot, if you work with technology and you work with other businesses with technology, you're probably in the right spot. If you take tickets at a movie theater, unless you are an aspiring to be an MSP or an IT consultant, you might not be in the right place, but you never know. We might change your life with this show, inspire you to do something totally new. So stick around; it might be worth it. That's exactly what happened to my co-host here, executive editor and longtime movie ticket taker who turned into a IT person, Rich Freeman.
Actually, I was a barista, and then I listened to a podcast, and it changed my life.
Yeah. All the podcasts that were happening in the 80s there. I know you were a big podcast guy back then.
Yeah. Who knew I was a trailblazer?
And you listened to that on your Sony Walkman? Is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they used to get mailed to me on cassettes, and I would listen on the Walkman.
So, folks, everything that we just said is not true, but it was still funny anyway. So, Rich, how was your Memorial Day?
It was good. It was restful. I'm here in Seattle, obviously, and we are still pretty tightly locked down, so it's not like there were a lot of activities going on, but it was good to take a break, and the weather was pretty good all in all, so it was nice.
Yeah, we're getting so used to seeing you with this background. So for those who watch, like, you get to see like the who watch like on YouTube instead of just listen. There's you can see kind of like my background here and Rich's background. Well, normally Rich's background changes like every week because he's always like in a hotel or in a conference room somewhere around. But like we're like used to what is behind you now, Rich. You're gonna have to take a picture of it and set it as your virtual background. So that
here's the thing. As I speak to you, like directly behind me, you can't quite see it if you're watching on video, but I have a green screen stand that recently arrived, and I've got a green screen right over there. So I'm actually, I kind of need to get it all sort of set up and check the lighting and get good with this green screen stuff. But I have all the technology now, so maybe I can start doing the whole virtual background thing.
Yeah, and make sure it's exactly what's behind you now. So take a picture, set up your green screen, and then put your background that you see right here on the green screen. It's so meta. It's so meta when you do that.
Yeah.
So, Rich, we're not alone. I'm super excited. We've got a guest host with us here today. It's going to be a great show. He's a super nice guy. I can already tell he's. I just met him when we were talking here a little earlier, but he seems like a funny guy and knowledgeable and loves to tell stories. So I think it's going to be a great show. Please welcome Michael Goldstein, President and CEO of LAN Infotech.
Hey guys, great to be on the show, and you guys got a good thing going there. I can feel it.
A lot of banter, a lot of fun. That's part of the point. You get your knowledge, you get your broccoli, but you get to have a little fun as well. So
I'm happy to be part of it.
Yeah, no, super glad to have you here. Michael, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. So I'm President and CEO of LAN Infotech. We are MSP, everything that you said in the beginning. Yes, and I did have a Walkman in the 80s and get my cassettes mailed to me. LAN Infotech is based in Fort Lauderdale. We are 22 employees and been in business 10 years. Trying to survive like everyone else out there in these new crazy times.
It is. So tell me a little bit about how your company's evolved over the years, how it started, and how you got into doing what you're doing.
Sure. 30 plus years ago, I worked for one of the largest law firms in the world. And I remember getting that first job down in downtown Manhattan and walking in, and there were 7 PCs. That's all we had. You go back to that time. But lo and behold, dial-up was the biggest thing for legal research. And one of the large companies gave us 100 PCs in exchange for dial-up usage over time. So within a year after that, we had 650 PCs across 2 locations. And lo and behold, I was flying all over the country because we also had, you know, a $20 million IBM mainframe that hosted all of our software. So we figured out a unique way to dial up, yes, dial up. And for those of you listening, you know, Google it, and dial up through a computer. There were no laptops to get access to the mainframe. So I traveled all over the world for this law firm and started writing code. You know, it was a crazy time in that. I ended up leaving there over time, just burnt out, and went to work for a VAR out on Long Island. And you know, we grew that company from 3 people over 20 years over to 60 plus, multiple cities, and separated from there and started LAN Infotech 10 years ago in Florida. I've been down in Florida 20 plus years, and we have a really strong vertical in the legal industry and not-for-profit industry. So, you know, definitely grew up over time, you know, those IBM PCs, those ATs, all the way out, you know, no communication, had the brick cell phone when it first came out, you know, and, you know, lived through all the crazy times of technology.
You're making me nostalgic here. You know, I'm thinking of dual floppy PCs and dial-up connections, like the modems that we would use in those days, and that noise that they would always make during the handshake process. And wow.
I mean, and you think about it, you know, I've always said over these periods of times that we are in a cyclical industry, because 30 years ago I was doing cloud with dial-up, right? Dialing into a mainframe. You know, we've actually go out on that mainframe and go and also timeshare it, not be able to outsource those CPU cycles. So I mean, a lot of the terms changed, and we kind of tell a lot of the newer ones to the community, we were doing this a long time ago. It's just more public now and readily available.
Interesting. So, so you still use the mainframe now, right? That's where you keep all your recipes now, or how does that work?
You know, the funny thing is that my home story is that I did, you know, my oldest son is 32 years old. So you go back and I have tons of VHS tapes. So on that free time, my wife and I were cleaning. We found tons of VHS tapes, as well as the small VHS-C tapes. So I bought a little device that goes USB into my computer and RCA jacks from the VHS out, and started recording, you know, getting those out to MP4s so that I could share them with my kids. There you go. You got a cool thing. I went the Dazzle approach, but realizing—
I went the generic one.
Really realizing how big it was. But in that same box of VHS tapes and all those things, I found the Walkman, cassettes. You know, when I dug a little further into that closet, my parents' Super 8 films. So in the midst of that, you know, I'm converting a lot of those things, and it's kind of cool, and noticing, oh my God, there goes my original PC, or, you know, you look at what your TVs look like, and, you know, all those things, besides all the relatives and everything, or the outfits.
Yeah, Rich has to laugh a little bit because how many times on this show over the last 147 episodes, Rich, has someone been talking about some doodad or device that they have, and I happen to have the one just like it within 5 feet of me?
Well, and I think you may have set a personal best on the last episode, actually, when that programmable calculator came up from decades ago, and it was like sitting on the desk there. What are the odds?
Yeah, it was the TI-84 that happened just last week. That's super funny. So, so now Florida, let's talk a little bit about the COVID-19 situation and how that's affected you personally and your business. So, Florida's one of the states that, from what I understand, is being a little more open now than others. I'm here in Illinois, so we're still in prison in Illinois. But so tell us about what the state is currently doing in Florida and how it's affecting your business, and
Sure.
let's just have a dialogue about that.
So, you know, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Palm Beach, West Palm Beach. So that's Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties when you actually see it on the news. That's the majority of the Florida outbreaks. Dade County, the Miami area, got hit the hardest. So the 3 of us were the last to open. So when the governor announced a couple weeks ago that some of the cities were opening, you know, these 3 counties were kind of held back. I was, I think my last trip, because like Rich, I don't travel as much as you, but I was at an exchange event in early March in San Antonio. It was actually, I was actually surprised, and you know, when I came back from that, and we were monitoring it just like everyone else. And having family in New York, seeing all these things were definitely kind of crazy. We did go on lockdown, and now even though that we've opened up for business in some areas, there's a lot of restrictions still on there. We're still in the phase 1 pieces. I think they were smart in the South Florida area to still have beaches closed until Tuesday. Luckily for those of us that are still kind of self-quarantined, that it did rain the whole Memorial Day weekend. Because the scary part is, going out and shopping and not seeing people in masks. So I literally came back a little while ago from a doctor's appointment with my wife. We were, in a food store. We're, besides scrubbing everything down, changing my clothes, wiping everything down, I think that, we're still trying to make sure that we keep everything going like it was 4 weeks ago. Because every day when we turn on the news, we have another, 6 feet wasn't enough. Maybe it should have been 12 feet. Maybe the mask worked, maybe the mask didn't work. So I think that we've seen a little dip in business. We do a lot of work in cloud. We do a lot of Microsoft work, and obviously on a subscription basis, we've seen that drop. I won't say significantly, but enough to bite the bullet and hope that it stopped. But I think that we do see an upward trend now. What we do is we're 22 people. We are fully cloud remote like you guys. It's been working well for us. But we still need to get deliveries. We still need to do things. So as of last Monday, we had some people go back to the office. We maintain a help desk. We scattered them around the office. If people had personal preferences or reasons that they couldn't go to the office, we obviously honor those reasons. For a lot of us, remote works well. But I think I was in the office on Tuesday. There were 5 of us in the office. We are pretty far spread out. And I got to tell you, it was actually good to see people again. We've put in a lot of make your own Clorox wipes, because you can't find any of those anymore. We have a lot of industrial hand sanitizer, a lot of paper towels that were out there. We've had a lot of company meetings. We've done, every week, Microsoft Teams meetings that were out there. We've done sales meetings, and we've kind of prepped everybody as to what we expect to be in the office. Put out gloves, put out masks. I came in, and the first thing I did is I wiped down every doorknob and showed everybody that was it. When they're in their offices, which kind of keep the door semi-closed. Since we weren't in the office, we're in a public building, we made sure that we changed the door lock codes. We didn't want any cleaning crews coming in. We started to go out and see some clients, and this is on an emergency basis, but we are questioning them. Are your people wearing masks? Can our guys work, freely in their own corner? We didn't want them to come in contact with any employees in any of our clients. But, luckily we've been able to do everything remotely. But, definitely kind of scary. My middle son's expecting, we're expecting our second grandchild in the middle of June. So I start thinking about, will I be able to hold her? Will I be able to see them? What will we do? And I do have a sister-in-law in New York City that still suffers from COVID symptoms. So, when I see people letting down their guard and knowing what it could potentially do, and say, you just came in contact with me, maybe that's another 2 weeks, I can't see my grandchildren, kind of scary. And these are the kind of things that we are telling our employees and telling our clients, so they understand, what we're going through, because I think everybody has a personal story, but when it hits you deep down, personally, you really want to make sure and keep your guard up, because I don't want to send employees out unmasked, and all of a sudden, next week, the CDC or WHO comes back and says, oh my God, you've been exposed. You should have done it this way. I'd rather go through things that we think have worked so far.
So, I mean, you spoke a little bit about what you're doing in your office, and, in terms of reopening it a little bit, and some people coming back and so on. In Florida, you're in one of those states that's a little bit ahead of the curve compared to a lot of other states, certainly my state of Washington. So in a sense, you're getting an earlier read on what clients are going to be interested in doing with their offices and so on. So, I mean, what's the early sense that you're getting from your customers here? How aggressively are they reopening their offices, bringing people in? Are the services that they're asking you for changing a little bit as there's maybe less work from home going on?
Well, the services haven't changed. I mean, the past 3 weeks, as we, maybe saw the light at the end of the tunnel. We were starting to think about how we're going to, re-engineer, someone that might have taken all that equipment home. How do we get it back into the network? And then also the biggest fear that we're seeing for businesses is we just had, we're on letter B so far of tropical storms that were out there. We just had a huge, I won't call it storm, but flooding come out. A lot of our clients are working in what we're calling ghost offices. Everything's running in those offices and they're using remote access to take over those desktops. So we started 3 or 4 weeks ago thinking about how people will come back and what we might have to do to those laptops, desktops to reintroduce them to the network. But more importantly, trying to give our business owners the idea that, yes, I don't want to do a disaster recovery preparedness event, but we have to. We've had power outages. Now power outages are even worse because now everyone's down where before they could have worked. And we're seeing businesses start to open up. We have a couple of large hospitality clients. So in one of the higher end hotels, the restaurants open with the new thermal sensing cameras, a lot of acrylic around. I don't remember the exact term, but it's like it's like a static gun that they shoot at it to destroy further germs. I think it's an anti-static gun, pretty high dollar priced that they've done. It's interesting to see because they are, kind of large flagship properties. One of the owners owns a large mall. We were discussing with them what they were doing. A lot of stores didn't open up, but people are still anxious to go to the mall. How do you enforce that you go out there and have to wear a mask? It's required, and they're telling us that in a couple instances they had to call local police because people I don't want to wear the mask. So I think I was on we're actively on calls with the local chambers of commerce. We're a member of probably 6 chamber of commerces within 60 miles of where I am now to hear what they're promoting and seeing. I guess you got the two sides of it. We want to stay safe, but yet we still have to go out there and businesses have to start. So being tourism and a lot of hospitality, it's painful to see some of those numbers that go out there.
So, you're in actually every owner of a tech business these days is in a lot of unusual, unfamiliar positions. I mean, even just listening to you talk before about you've got gloves and sanitizer, and it's like all the stuff that people like yourself have had to figure out how to procure and the policies you've had. Who would have thought a year ago we would be thinking about any of this stuff? But it's definitely a different situation to be in where you're balancing the safety of your employees against, theoretically at least, customer service. So I mean, are you running into situations, has there been any friction at all with your customers where you're telling them, I can't do what you want me to do unless you provide a safer environment? Or are they understanding maybe of the places where you have to sort of draw a line?
3 weeks ago, it would have been a different story. I mean, we've had a couple of outages that are out there, and we didn't say we refused to go in. I had to get online with the business owner and explain to him that, hey, yes, we're trying to be cautious and let us try to work this remote. But in reality, yes, we're an essential business, but I can't expose my employees to go to some work environments. Now we're being a little more flexible. We are asking, and people have been very tolerant of that. Remote's been king so far. Luckily, one of the things that we do with a lot of our clients is we make sure that all key components have manufacturer warranties in place, valid warranties. We've had a couple instances where we've had hardware failure. And luckily for us, we were able to have, HP, Dell, Lenovo go in and repair those. You get a blown power supply. In one instance early on, we had a client that was on the other side of the state. We led them through FaceTime how to replace a power supply. So, I mean, we've come up with a couple of ingenious ways to go out there. The clients have been very understanding on there. But, in some of our industries, mainly legal and healthcare, they are valid businesses that are still able to operate. So we've been very lucky along those lines. And, again, after hours is kind of crazy because it's usually, people get their family time. It's 9:30 at night and then they can't connect. So that's where we've really had to talk back to our businesses and say, listen, if you can't print at 10 o'clock at night, it's not an emergency call, but if you can't get in, got to give us a little time. And we were on site with a down client Memorial Day. So, I mean, we have not said no. We just wanted them to say, hey, you got to keep your distance. We need to go out there and work. So it's been a challenging environment, but we're happy to see businesses come back.
So you mentioned earlier on business is a little bit down, and I'm curious how much of that is because customers are conservative about spending right now and conserving cash. How much of that is due to downsizing and furloughs and layoffs, and on a per user basis, say there's just not as much revenue coming in?
So I will say that we did have 2 clients physically shut down and go out of business. One of them was actually next door to our business. So we got to, I hate to say it, we got to see that carnage up close. And this was right as things got crazy. And, that was something I never want to see, a husband and wife team, 30 employees, closing the doors. Cloud is cloud. We've definitely seen a decrease in, people getting furloughed. So that's Office 365 licenses. And, the other thing that we had is pre-COVID, we had equipment in-house that was there for projects. We're anxious to get some of those out, and some clients were pretty lenient, saying, yeah, I understand we can't come in, you can't come in, we'll pay you for the product. So we're anxious to see, that. In the midst of things, after everyone got working remote, we did see a huge drop in tickets, on there. So what we did is, luckily we did get PPP. And we, being the business owner, you start picking, what you will do and how you do it. It was a painful couple of nights. Luckily, we didn't let anybody go. I just couldn't figure out what I would do. So we went back to our vendors, and really all the things that, Rich, how many times did I see you in an event that I go out there? We see all these great ideas. We come back with these products. We've implemented a few products. And now it was a time to put a schedule together to get all the engineers certified, trained. We came up with, we're a big Datto customer, we're a big Webroot customer. We, have Kaseya. So we built a minimum training type program where everybody would have to go back and have these basic online classes and, big Microsoft trainings. So I don't want to say we did make work. We did make work, and we did all the things that we should have done, months ago. We finished implementing LionGuard. We started going out there and worked on finishing up our IT Glue implementation. So, in all of it really wasn't make work. It was, hey guys, you have the time now. This is the stuff that we never really had the time to. And I think we made all of ourselves better. And as we did those company meetings, yes, some of it was kind of sales training for the engineers that were out there, but it's like, guys, listen, cloud is the way to go. If you knew how to spell Azure, but you weren't in that piece, that you didn't know what it was, now's the time. So between our distributors, between Microsoft, hundreds and hundreds of trainings that we've assigned to our engineers, and I think that we made all of them better. And that we are very positive about the next up and coming quarters. Our clients definitely need desktop, they need security, they need more infrastructure. And in the past 2 weeks alone, I've written a ton of proposals out to get people out to the cloud, whether it's Azure, WVD, whether it's a better backup strategy, needed better bandwidth, obviously security awareness training. So I think that we've used this time to go out there and make our employees as well as our company better, and we were able to keep them all employed.
That's really, really awesome. And I've spoken to, it's a great way to use this time to the extent you have found yourself, anyone has found themselves with downtime they weren't anticipating. If you've been investing that in the business and things like certifications and, configuring products and just working your way through that list of stuff that you always want to do and can never find the time for. It's a great way to use that time that you didn't expect to have. So that's great stuff.
And, in between tickets come in, we've eaten our own dog food. Again, we're all on the cloud. Our VoIP system worked. I think that almost every day there's been a Microsoft Teams event. We've been seeing companies like Microsoft. We've been seeing Google saying, never have to come back to work. We've been seeing, a lot of those things that are out there. So we've been just, eating our own dog food. We use Microsoft Teams. We try to do it for all our pieces. We actually, didn't want to paddle upstream. Next week will be a Zoom Room integrator. So even though that we had, product A, we found a way to to make Zoom profitable. But the most important contribution that I think that we've started to do is that, listen, we can't convert what we do to make masks or ventilators or things. So what we've gone out is we've gone out into the community, 6 or 7 chambers. We've run informational type events. We've done no charge Microsoft Teams training. We did this for Broward County Public Schools for a handful of their teachers. We did it for a couple of cities. We've done it for not-for-profits. We've done Zoom training. For a couple of our not-for-profits, we're actually helping them organize their fundraising type of events. One of the not-for-profits, it's in 2 weeks on a Sunday. We volunteered all the time. We're getting all the know-how of what we know of trying to put on a 600-person, company event, and with various Zoom rooms with sponsors. So we've kind of taken that and we've given it back to the community. We don't ask for anything back. When we did stuff with some of the not-for-profits, I had to get on the line with their IT team because they might have been national and tell them, listen, I know you might never buy anything from me, but you know what? I'm here to show you what you can get for nothing, or what we're doing in the not-for-profit space with Microsoft, and we'll even show you. So that's what we've been trying to do, and webinar after webinar. Today we hosted something for, they called it aged resiliency, of how the elderly population can utilize technology. We just helped them host it. Our phone vendor intermediary gave us a great webinar type product. We've been hosting webinars for all these organizations, and really what we cared about is just helping them get things across. I have one tonight for another chamber event from 5 to 7:30. It's time-saving apps, and then we're going to make it fun. I've been gathering fun websites that are out there. Who would know that I could virtually tour the Louvre? Or, one of my little dumb passions is I found that you could watch this old school webcam and watch Old Faithful shoot off in Yellowstone National Park live. So, we're trying to find fun things to make it fun, as well as kind of donate back to the community and try to help them utilize some of the tools that they might not have had time at no charge.
So Michael, one last question before we move on to the news. Of all of the things that you've done and that you've learned with your company to kind of react to this, what has been maybe the most important thing that maybe others haven't thought of, or maybe the most surprising thing that you guys have done that has been helpful to staying afloat?
You know what? I think that personally, I love to give back to the community, and I was surprised how many other people kind of jumped on board with that. I think that there are a lot of caring people out there. We all want to hear things, and how accessible our association relationships were. All the Chamber of Commerce's in the whole turmoil before PPP. I think that it really came down to all of your relationships. And in our PPP experience, Bank One couldn't even get in touch with them at that end of it. It was my main banker. Secondary Bank, had a small relationship, made a call, boom, they let us through this. So I think you really do rely on your relationships. And I think that's been the most important thing in looking at everything, opening up that, and Rich, I'll say it, opening up that little old black book of all your contacts, reaching out how people are doing, and you see how we can help each other. Because I think that's the only way that you're going to get through this is, relying on other people and then relying on you. So we're only as good as our network.
I knew I shouldn't have thrown away my little black book from years ago.
There you go.
So,
and
well,
I think
awesome stuff.
that with the digital pieces, there are people I haven't spoken to in God knows how long. We always drop the casual LinkedIn, hey, how you doing? Now let's get a quick Zoom meeting together because we could. So,
yeah, interesting stuff. Well, Michael, it's great to have you on with us, and you're going to be here with us for the whole show. Unfortunately, not for an interview segment. We got kind of later because we kind of had to record that last week. But we'll definitely talk to you a little bit about Kaseya, because you were mentioning that you guys were using them, so we can maybe pick your brain on that a little bit. But we're going to go ahead and dive into the news. For those who are listening on your phone or device while on the go, we have an episode page for every episode that we set up that has links to all of the stories that we're going to talk about. So we've got 3 news stories that we're going to talk about today. go and hit them on your phone. And same if you're watching on YouTube, open up the description area and you'll find links to these stories. So go there and then you can read along and get all of the detail, because we're just going to kind of scratch the surface and discuss just our thoughts on them. So here we go. Our first news story is kind of about Carbonite and Webroot integration. It says first fruits. So which one was the flower? Which one was the stamen, Rich?
You know, I normally do a pretty thorough interview. I forgot to ask that. I'll have to circle back and follow up on that. And so we're referring to an article that I posted it just yesterday, I believe, or maybe the day before. And it's based on an interview I did recently with Hal Lonas, who is with OpenText. And to kind of set the context for what we're talking about here, I should actually give you a quick little tour of Hal Lonas's resume, basically. So say a year and a half ago at this time, Hal was the CTO of Webroot. February 2019, Carbonite buys Webroot. And shortly after that, Hal became the CTO of Carbonite. So he was in charge of technology for both Carbonite and Webroot. Later last year, I want to say in September, OpenText buys Carbonite, and with it, Webroot. And so today, Hal's title, he is the CTO of OpenText's SMB and consumer division. And that title actually sort of encapsulates the strategic logic behind the OpenText acquisition. They bought Carbonite for $1.42 billion. And the reason they spent that kind of money is OpenText historically has done a lot of knowledge management technology for bigger businesses. Like every other vendor out there, they're aware of the managed services phenomenon and how huge it is. They're aware of how big a market there is in SMB, and they wanted to get into that. And so they spent a big hunk of change to acquire a company that had a big SMB partner base, and through Webroot in particular, which has always really specialized in MSP, they acquired an MSP business. One of the things that I learned from Hal catching up with him is that so far, at least, OpenText is being very respectful of that knowledge that they acquired. So Carbonite and Webroot are sort of operating as a separate business unit within OpenText. So, you know, Hal has an OpenText title, but the Carbonite Webroot team is being given free rein to kind of keep doing what they were doing before. OpenText is sort of, you know, observing and learning essentially, because they want to understand the markets those guys specialize in better. So it's been a while, you know, that Carbonite buys Webroot, 15 months ago at this point. And there hasn't been a ton of integration across those two companies' portfolios up until this point. You've been able to buy, you know, Carbonite products through Webroot to some extent, and vice versa, but they haven't really tied the technologies together very much. That is now beginning to change. And it's, you know, part of what's happened is they were working on that. Then along comes the OpenText acquisition. They were working on integration again. Along comes coronavirus. So there have been some issues that have delayed a lot of this work, but we're very, very close now to actually starting to see how these product sets come together. And the first thing we'll see in Q3 of this year is the ability for people who use the Webroot Global Site Manager, Webroot's centralized administration console, to manage Carbonite's Office 365 / Microsoft 365 backup product as well through that same interface. As you get a little bit further down the road, you're going to start seeing the security tools and the backup tools share information and coordinate activity. So, you know, Q3, Q4 this year, you'll start seeing things where, for example, you know, Webroot's endpoint protection solution today has self-defense mechanisms built in, so that if an attacker tries to shut down security, disable this feature or whatever, the Webroot system will detect that and stop it from happening. They're going to extend some of that functionality to Carbonite backup products, so that if a ransomware attacker tries to shut down backups so that there's nothing to restore if everything gets encrypted, the Webroot security software will detect that, it'll stop it from happening, send notification, etc. There's functionality coming probably this year, maybe early next year, that will ensure that if you are restoring backed up data that you collected through a Carbonite tool, you're not restoring malware. You may have accidentally backed up an infected file of some kind. The Webroot product will be watching in real time as data gets restored. And if it sees something that shouldn't be in there, it'll stop that from happening. So, just some examples. So I guess a few takeaways there. One is, if you are a Webroot or a Carbonite partner concerned about what it means that they're now part of OpenText, for the time being, it doesn't mean a whole lot, except that according to how they've got some more investment capital to play around with. OpenText is kind of keeping its distance at this point and allowing those companies to do what they do best. And then if you are particularly if you're a partner of both of those vendors, Carbonite and Webroot, which are one company, but I still think of them as two, you're going to start actually beginning to see some of the synergies that they've been working towards for a while.
Now, is all of this integration happening through a standard API that allows it to work with other products, or is this all in the background because they're now the same company? These are deeper integrations than what you can do it at the API level.
So most of what in fact, all of what I just talked about is stuff that's happening, way behind the scenes, source code level, et cetera. But one thing I didn't mention is Webroot has for 4+ years now had an API that they call their Unity API, and it is like the core API that connects their tools to RMM tools from ConnectWise and Kaseya and Ninja and other companies. And they're going to start incorporating some Carbonite capabilities into that Unity API as well. So if you're a ConnectWise Automate user, for example, down the road, you're going to have the ability to interact not just with the Webroot tools, but some of the Carbonite tools through that same API and sort of sync up all three of those platforms.
Very cool. Michael, you said you're a big Webroot customer. What's your reaction to this? I
think that's great. It's kind of interesting that I was a customer of all three, because I used to sell PC Docs, which was bought out by OpenText over time. But I think that it's great, because think about it. As you're looking at this, what good is the backup data, right? If you're just backing up virus or you're backing up malware. So it's a good piece, and I think that all of us are always looking for that single pane of glass, so that we can, multitask from that portal. So all these things seem like amazing pieces, and I don't want to say, hey, it's about time, but it's great to see, those two giants, all three giants, put something together that will integrate.
And I mean, it's interesting because they have a strategic vision and a sort of technology vision for why to do this. And it's shared by Acronis. I haven't mentioned Acronis, but so at Carbonite/Webroot, they call this their cyber resilience strategy. And the idea is that there are different dimensions of being, having a resilient infrastructure. Security is part of that, but backup is part of that as well. It's a layer in that multi-layered kind of approach to protecting data. Acronis, for quite a while, I guess since last September officially, but even before that, behind the scenes, has been pursuing a very similar vision. They call it Cyber Protect, but the idea is backup alone isn't sufficient, security alone isn't sufficient. You need both of those things, and therefore you want those tools coordinated. You want them working together, sharing information, and collaborating to protect endpoints and data from attack.
And I think it's key also because, some people that might not be Carbonite or Webroot customers might be thinking of the consumer pieces of it. To see this as an enterprise type product, giving those enterprise type solutions really gives them a big push in the market.
And interesting thing about that point, this is it's kind of buried at the end of the article there, because this is still very speculative. But I was talking with Hal about some of these changes they're making to Webroot products, some of which, and we won't get into the whole evasion shield technology they just rolled out, but that's based on something that was originally in Webroot's consumer products. And as we were talking about this, and I'm thinking about the fact that there's all this work from home that's still going on out there, and a lot of people connecting to corporate resources via home PCs in a lot of cases, we were talking about, the lines blurring between consumer security technologies and business security technologies. And, no decisions have been made whatsoever along these lines at Carbonite or Webroot, but it's on his mind too, clearly, that the needs in these products are getting to be very, very similar, and that at some point down the road, you could actually see these separate consumer and business products that's really just become one product set. where it's just not going to matter all that much. Is this a consumer PC or a business PC? If you're working with business data at all, you need the same set of capabilities. Let's just kind of merge this all together.
I think that in today's day and age that we're going to see, it's going to be the same thing of that consumer to business desktop also, or laptop. Now that we'll all probably longer in the remote world.
So do you foresee? I know there was a huge scramble to get employees working remotely, and that ended up requiring the use of a lot of maybe personal hardware. But if work from home is going to be the new mainstay standard for a lot of the workforce now, do you think that we're still going to be using their home PCs, or do you think we're just going to start issuing and deploying business owned hardware that we can run the standard agents on that we normally do?
A lot of the plans that we've been discussing is business owned hardware, or if the firm believes in it enough, fully web-based, or something like Azure WVD, some virtual desktop, and then maybe you can use a consumer device because you own the endpoint. The issue in the past 6 to 8 weeks has really been that now we are supporting a lot of home desktops, home laptops that are out there, or ancient. I think we ran into one, and I never heard of this, that we couldn't even update the MacBook because it was so old. So in reality, usually you don't run into that. It wouldn't take updates to run software. So I think that that's what we're running across. And really, there's been a lot of advances in owning that endpoint, whether it's your home desktop, or your home laptop, or your business device. But I think you're either going to see refreshes, or you're going to look at that dollar cost versus having a virtual desktop someplace in the cloud.
Yeah. You'll run across a MacBook you can't update. I was surprised too, guys. I have this old Toshiba in the basement. I think we've even talked about that. Runs Windows for Workgroups 3.11, and
Wow.
I can't seem to update that one anymore, and I don't understand why. In fact, the Windows Update icon isn't even there. It's like they took it off.
That would be an interesting call to Microsoft support.
I like it. So anything else here to talk about, Rich, or anything else about the vision that they're rolling along?
No, I mean, it was good to get an update on that. Again, there's a lot of, I was talking about a lot of stuff. It's all happening Q3, Q4, so I'm sure we'll be revisiting this story in the second half of the year. But it's still mostly in the vision stage right now, and we're getting close to the point where this stuff starts arriving in the channel.
Very cool, excellent. We'll keep an eye on that, and we know that as Carbonite and Webroot start doing more stuff behind the scenes here, that there'll be some more interesting things to talk about. We're going to move on to our next story, which is, hey, this is a good one. I like this story, Rich. We have an article up where obviously it was just Memorial Day, and May is kind of the month in which we celebrate our vets and heroes. So we have one that recognizes vets who work in the channel. Tell us about this.
Yeah, this is great stuff. This did go up just yesterday on the ChannelProNetwork.com website, and it was written by our colleague Colleen Fry. Colleen is our managing editor. She does many things for us at ChannelPro. But one of the things she does that I love is she has a recurring column called Not for Profit, where she will write about things that MSPs and VARs or vendors are doing just to benefit the community. And so she in honor of Memorial Day this week, she posted a story that in which she spoke to a number of different vendor executives who are themselves veterans. And so she spent some time talking with them about their journey, basically from the military into the IT industry, which I think provides really interesting context for the suitability of veterans for work in the IT industry. You get a feel for how that happens and why that's a good fit for a lot of people. But then she also dives into that particular topic. These are all people she spoke to who work at companies that hire a lot of veterans, because veterans very often make excellent IT employees for a number of reasons. If you are working at a help desk, for example, there's probably a standard set of operating procedures that your company follows to resolve certain kinds of issues. Well, that, if you're in the Marine Corps, as Craig Fulton from ConnectWise was. Craig Fulton is the Chief Customer Officer at ConnectWise, used to be in charge of products there. He was in the Marine Corps, and they teach you a certain way to do things by the book in the Marine Corps. That training lends itself very well to working in the IT industry. There's a kind of can-do spirit, a dedication to accomplishing goals that people take with them from the military. There's a familiarity and comfort level with teamwork that you learn in the military that lends itself very well to the IT industry. So, I mean, this article in a very concrete way kind of points out some of the ways in which veterans can make great IT employees. It's something that I have spoken about with Channel Pros in the past as well, and that I know a lot of people have experience with. And then, the other thing to say about the article is at the end, Colleen talks about some programs out there that are really specifically designed to help veterans learn more about IT and pursue careers in IT. We're at a moment economically right now, a moment in the industry where the talent crunch, the shortage of talent to hire is maybe not as big an issue as it's been in recent years, but this economy is going to rebound, and we will find ourselves once again with more demand for technical skills than we have people to satisfy it. And so it's a great thing for the veterans. It's a great thing for the channel that there are these efforts out there to help veterans find their way into the industry. And Colleen has information here about programs from ConnectWise, from Fortinet, from CompTIA, that are all looking up. If you are in a position to hire now or in the future, take a look, give some thought to hiring a veteran.
Yeah, Michael, do you have you hired any vets at LAN Infotech over the years?
Over the years, I wouldn't say vets, but we had a couple that were in the National Guard. So at time, I remember the first employee, and I didn't realize what the commitment of that employee is out to the National Guard. So it was a couple times every other month to go up and go up to training camp. And I remember one time them FaceTiming us back from before he was about to jump from a helicopter. We're like, oh my God, we're worried about servers up and down. This guy's in one of those troop carriers. A few years ago, also, Fort Lauderdale used to have a big fleet week. And a few years ago, through our local Chamber of Commerce, we got involved with, they call it Broward Navy Days. And we helped put together a couple of events to have all these Navy crewmen come off the ships, come out and learn about technology. But I remember I did get a tour of the USS New York. And as you're going through and meeting all these sailors and talking to them on not only just tech but everything, it was just kind of amazing to be around them. And I had taken my wife out on the USS New York, and we were hanging out in the back of the boat. And you see these big things that were covered in nets. We were like, what are those things? And in reality, as I looked past one of them, we forget. You're there entertaining on the boat. You're inside a big port, and behind it, I look, and there are these two young guys that were Marines sitting there on one of those big machine guns. And it brings you back into reality that you're on this Navy ship that could be a target anywhere, anyhow. And even though while you're socializing, they're still out there surfing and protecting the country. But it was kind of a shocker to me, losing that fact. But everything that we've run into, and guys that are either through the industry, and Rich, you hit the nail on the head. Teamwork, attention to detail, going through standard operating procedures. All of those things are all the pluses that we've run into in whether it's out in the field or even on some interviews.
So, Rich, I got a couple of questions. Some you may not be able to answer, but I can maybe pose them out here for discussion. It seems like are there specific branches of the military that seem more in tune to IT employment after service? So, for example, does the Navy tend to offer a better, I don't want to say a better experience, but an experience that just kind of lends itself to IT down the road, or the Air Force, or anything there that might help people find the right employees who are vets?
Well, I mean, it's a great question, and I don't have a definitive answer, like which service is maybe most, likely to produce a great job candidate. But, one of the things that I didn't really focus in on that comes up in these autobiographies, essentially, that the people Colleen spoke to tell in her article is, they were all working with technology in the military. So they weren't necessarily prepared coming straight out of the military to, support servers or something like that. But they were in technical jobs in the military. And so again, I don't know which branch, the military is maybe most like this, but the path that a lot of people pursue is they get technical training, they discover that they're interested in technology, and that's part of what prepares them to come out and work in the IT industry.
Maybe that's one of the, go ahead, Michael.
I think like any other business, technology has to run. There's desktops to support. There's wireless technology, but we've seen a big influx of cyber from all the branches that come across there.
Yeah, I think maybe a lot of employers too might look at somebody who's just coming out of service and saying, well, they were working on in the article, Air Force airline jet engines, for example, and it may not be directly attributable to IT, but what maybe some people don't think about is that it's not necessarily about what exactly they did in the military, but it's about the work ethic and the skills that they learned on how to do jobs, that they could learn new skills, but that type of experience you have working in the military is not something that you can really get anywhere else.
Yeah, and it's interesting. One of the persons that Colleen spoke with is named Keith Buswell. He works for Exabeam, a security vendor. I think it was his story that he tells in here, where he came out of the military. He was applying for an IT job somewhere, and he didn't have directly applicable experience. He had been in a technical role, but he didn't have directly applicable experience. And the guy he did the interview with basically said, "I like everything about you, but your resume is all wrong. Like nothing I need to see on a resume is here, but all the other attributes that I look for in an employee are there." And this Keith got the job basically because he had qualities as an employee that this hiring manager appreciated. And I mean, things worked out for everybody involved. So yeah, there are definitely situations where it might not look on paper like somebody straight out of the military is ready for an IT role, but that doesn't mean that they can't handle the job. And the other thing to point out is that's why these programs, like the one CompTIA, for example, or Fortinet have going, exist, is to kind of bridge that gap so that that one issue, the hole on the resume, if you will, doesn't become a disabling factor for a veteran looking for work in IT.
So there's two sides to every coin, and you said that a lot of these organizations exist to plug that hole. Are there any other issues that employers see or have when hiring vets that makes them not want to hire them or avoid them?
I mean, honestly, I haven't heard, we should ask Michael. I have not heard stories, but that might be because people don't want to tell those stories. So I'm not aware of anything myself.
I view, Rich, just like you said, I think that what we're lacking today in a lot of, technical jobs that are out there are the people skills. And we know that you get that in the military. I don't look on anything negative on that side of it. There's a lot of positive, depending on what state you're hiring in. There's a lot of programs that help fund that. There's definitely a lot of post-military organizations that help recruit specifically for that and getting them into tech jobs. But I do know that in the state of Florida, there are programs that give benefit to business owners if they hire vets. I don't know specifically, and it's not the reason we go out and look for it, but there are a lot of pros going out there that versus the cons where you might be looking at that.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Well, it's a great article. I really encourage everyone to go and give it a read and read about these three individuals here that Colleen interviewed and learn their stories and keep your mind open as you're looking for other positions to fill down the road. A vet might be the right kind of person for you and for your company. You never know. And it's a good chance to also think about things that you do to make your company somewhat vet friendly, right? I mean, do you have to do anything to make your company vet friendly, Michael?
I don't have to do anything to make it vet friendly, but you know what? It's also that piece of the give back. We always hear the bad stories after, non-benefits or people, we've read those stories. So it's a good way to thank them for their service that's out there. And I do want to plug Colleen because I've been on the other side of her interview and she's great.
Well, good. We'll make sure that she knows that, and Rich, you got your little packet of gold stars or smiley stickers that we can give her. All right,
I
good.
ran out of those a long time ago because everybody thinks she's great.
Well, we got to order some. We got to order some more stickers.
Yes.
Little cute animals now giving thumbs up would be the style to get this time. All right. Next, we're gonna switch gears. We're gonna talk about Kaseya. Now, we do have an interview coming up here with Fred Voccola, the CEO of Kaseya. We're going to talk about how the coronavirus pandemic impacted them and their partners and their strategies. But first, we're going to talk about some news that came out of Kaseya that showcases some portfolio-wide upgrades and integrations. Lots to dissect here, Rich. Give us the overview, and then Michael, as a Kaseya customer or someone who deploys a lot of Kaseya, you'll have a lot here to chime in on, I imagine.
So yeah, and the accent is on integration here. So just a little bit of background. Had there not been, say, a coronavirus that we're all dealing with right now, Kaseya would have done their big partner event right at the beginning of this month, or early in May. They were forced to reschedule that. They're planning to do it as an in-person event still in August. As of right now, we'll kind of see how things are going in a few months and whether or not that's possible. But they were planning to host this big event early on in May and make a bunch of product announcements then. And so what they decided to do instead last week was host I think it was a 3 or 4 hour online kind of event as well, in which principally there were two big keynotes. Fred Voccola, the CEO, came on to kind of paint a big strategic picture, and we'll come back to that. And then there was also a product release, product roadmap discussion led by Mike Puglia, who's their senior product guy over there at Kaseya. And most of what he spoke about had to do with integration. So context for that, obviously, for folks who are familiar with Kaseya and the road that they've been down for a number of years now, they have been quite aggressive in terms of acquisitions. They bought Unitrends, the BDR vendor. They bought Rapid Fire Tools, which does assessments and security, IT Glue, ID Agent, another security vendor, spanning cloud-to-cloud backup. So they've built this whole kind of family of brands, if you will, each of which continues to do business independently. But Kaseya behind the scenes has been working to weave all of these different companies and products together into this one IT complete platform that they call it. And what they want to do basically is pull people in through any one of those products and then gradually kind of give them a reason to use all of the different products. And the idea that what should be, from their perspective, the motivation to use lots of different Kaseya products is that they are integrated, and that integration eliminates what Kaseya likes to call the space between, which is to say that the transition from your RMM console to your BDR management tool to your documentation tool, all these little transitions and switches and so on can kind of sap your productivity some. Whereas if you have this Swiss Army knife kind of platform with lots of different tools that are bound together, your technicians can be more efficient, more productive. So they're on this quarterly upgrade cycle right now. They're investing, each of those different business units is required now to invest at least 20% of its R&D budget in integration efforts. And 4 times a year, we're going to be seeing these big waves of integrations. And I'll just get there, like you said, Matt, there's a lot going on in this article here. So I'll just provide some examples of the kind of thing that they're looking to do. So one of the things that they announced last week was this new automated remediation feature that connects their RMM tool and their PSA tool. And the idea is, if the PSA tool, you open up a ticket in the PSA tool of a particular kind, that ticket can kick off a script or a set of scripts in the RMM solution that will at least attempt to remediate the issue without any manual intervention. They have added, the ability to inspect documentation from directly inside the PSA tool, I believe, if you're looking at information about, or maybe it's the RMM tool, excuse me, but if you're looking at information about an endpoint in the RMM tool and you want to see the documentation, one click, you can pull up the documentation. If you're in IT Glue, their documentation tool, and you're looking at information about a server and you want to remote into it, one click, you can do that through IT Glue, as opposed to having to switch consoles and do it separately there. They are working towards some integration between Unitrends, their BDR product, and the RMM tool, so that you're not going to have alerts popping up sort of separately in two different places that you have to be looking at. If there's a problem with a backup, you want that to show up in your other management tools automatically and not have to be the integration point yourself noticing that there's an issue over there. They are working on a unified backup portal. So they have Unitrends, which does appliance-based backup. They have Spanning, which does cloud-to-cloud backup. Why have two different management interfaces for those systems? Let's create one backup portal that's going to pull all that information together. So, you know, some very specific instances of some things in recent months that Kaseya has done to begin weaving together all these products that they've been acquiring in recent years. And like I say, they're very emphatic about this. There is a lot more to come. And they really believe that this is sort of core to their competitive strategy going forward. This is what will draw more people to the platform and inspire more people to use more Kaseya solutions.
Yeah, lots to go through here. And of course, as they grow their portfolio, they're also, I'm sure, looking to acquire more, because that's what Kaseya does these days. However, they will not buy everything. I made a gigantic party sub a few weeks ago, and I offered it to them for $1 million. And Rich, they turned me down. Who turns down a party sub?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, and there's a business model behind that, I think. So
I call it the Mortadella business model. Yeah. So no, okay. So Michael is a customer who may or may not like party subs. I don't know. We'll have to get into that later on in the show. More integration is always a good thing, I think, especially if you're trying to increase efficiency. Now, do changes like these and does it inspire you to use more Kaseya tools and products?
It definitely does. So we're a relatively new Kaseya RMM customer, probably in the past 3 months. It's their VSA product. We also have IT Glue. We also have ID Agent. So again, I think the single pane of glass really makes sense. The Kaseya scripting tool is really powerful. So I could see, Rich, you know, all the things that you said of having, you know, a ticket open in the PSA, trigger that out. Obviously backup. You know, our PSA today integrates with another BDR product that's out there, but not as a high end as what you started to mention. We've seen a ton from Kaseya. Their support's been great. You can't go a day without seeing another, you know, virtual event that they're putting out there. You know, the cyber platform that's in place. You know, we're also a Rapid Fire Tools customer, so it would be great if I had one pane of glass to be able to go out there and see all that integration happen.
So we've been talking a lot about the elusive single pane of glass, and it just seems like they keep adding more single panes of glass. Do you really foresee, Michael, that you will eventually have one interface to everything?
Never. We've been thinking about that for 30 years. But you know what? If your single point of entry comes in as a ticket, you know, user puts something in place. If there's some big brother that looks over that ticket and maybe gives the engineer more information directly from the RMN, and maybe it is a single spot for them to maybe restore a mailbox, or, you know, think about the last article that we were talking about with just Carbonite and Webroot. Everybody's looking to combine those products into one thing to have less human interaction. So I think that, you know, you have to pick your pane of glass and then decide if you want to have the multiple panes, or that they have a really good product set that you could stick with that one vendor fits all type of piece.
So of all the things that they kind of listed here in this article, I know you had a chance to skim through it and listen to what Rich was saying. What's the most interesting or exciting thing here that they announced to you?
Well, first of all, at a big picture that they're looking across the product line, because obviously last year was a big buying year for them to try to put all that together. You know, we just need one central piece to go out. I like the idea of being able to have a ticket go out there, or not even just the ticket, maybe something that it's sensed in the RMN on the network to trigger a ticket and be able to trigger a human interaction after you already fixed it. So in reality, if we can carve out more seconds in the day of having something automatically trigger out versus, we all hate getting that customer call, they're down or something's down. And in reality, that alert was sitting in our queue amongst all the other hundreds of tickets. So we've been finding that overall that Kaseya has been helping us automate those processes. And also just from a business sense, their last releases in their marketing platform has been unbelievable. We had, on week 1 or week 2 in COVID, we had scripts that were already out there, templates of remote work documents. I mean, that marketing platform that they put together was extremely, extremely helpful in the first couple of weeks of the outbreak. I mean, that was just amazing. And just to see all these pieces together. And Rich, besides it being an in-person event, they also have a virtual ticket that's on there.
Oh, okay.
I saw the marketing this morning.
Yeah, I suspect we'll see a lot of that going forward.
Definitely.
All right. Anything in here that was not interesting to you?
Hey, you know what? We've made a major investment in Kaseya, so it's all interesting to me. And one thing that you didn't put out there that might not have been in the article, their Auth Anvil product was one of the first 2FA products, and they rebranded that whole piece. So, bringing that back into it. Obviously, cyber is a big important piece, but that was rebranded in the past, month and a half ago.
Yeah, and on an earlier episode of the podcast, we did talk about that, and it is part of this latest quarterly wave of updates that they did. And yeah, so that has really, that Auth Anvil product is now part of the ID Agent kind of universe. We combined that with some other ID Agent function. Very interesting product.
And the interesting part about it is that each of those products are a whole podcast in itself. If you go into Unitrends, we could spend 2 hours talking about backup and spanning. You go into ID Agent, it's not just, dark web searches anymore. It's, awareness training, phishing pieces. Rapid Fire Tools also had come out with more cyber pieces since they've been under the Kaseya label. So every one of those could cover us for a week.
We could also spend 2 hours talking about party subs, believe it or not, because that's what we do here on ChannelPro Weekly. So it's good. No, it's great stuff. Like I said, we have links to these articles from the show notes page on the website, channelpronetwork.com, episode 147. Find that show page, and then you'll be able to go and find all these real easy. If you're watching on YouTube, click the description box, and you'll see the links in there for you to check out and read through this, because there's a lot more detail in here that we did not cover, but we are going to move on. And I'm excited to say we're not going to move on. We're going to move on from the news, but we're not going to move on from Kaseya. Rich and I last week got a chance to sit down and have a conversation with Fred Voccola, CEO of Kaseya, and we talked a little bit about the coronavirus pandemic, how it impacted Kaseya's partners and their strategies. It's a great interview, so we're going to go ahead and switch to that, and we will be back in just a minute. Well, the coronavirus pandemic is affecting everyone each and every day, and it seems to be nonstop. And we're still trying to figure out which ways it's affecting the channel, and everybody's got their own take. And here to talk about his take is Fred Voccola, the CEO of Kaseya. Welcome, Fred.
Thanks, Matt. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great having you on. Yeah, for those who are maybe unfamiliar with you and Kaseya, can you tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Kaseya. What we do is we provide a platform for MSPs to basically manage the infrastructure and the computing infrastructure of all their customers. So our platform is called IT Complete, and it's a comprehensive integrated platform that basically gives the MSP or the channel partner, whatever terminology we want to use, it provides them the technology that they use to deliver any and all types of managed services. So if a channel partner is delivering backup as a service, security as a service, managing endpoints, networks, infrastructure, compliance, etc., our technology is the technology that's under the covers, allowing them to deliver that service.
Yeah, and you're obviously calling in from a secure remote location, quarantined in somewhere. Where are you quarantined in?
I'm actually in the wonderful state of New Jersey.
Oh wow, coronavirus land 101.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We have all sorts of air purifiers and burning scented candles and every other type of superstition to keep everybody healthy. Now, but we're good. I'm here on the Jersey Shore, where I grew up, so very glad to be here.
Well, awesome. Yeah, glad to have you here. Now, the coronavirus situation is obviously top of the mind for everyone in the industry right now. How much time do you spend talking to MSPs about it these days, and how do they say it's affecting them?
was it 24 hours in a day? So probably 23 hours, and I get 1 hour of sleep. It's been, I hate calling it the coronavirus or COVID. It's really the economic climate that's been created by the responses to it. Whether you agree with them or don't, we've put ourselves into the worst economic situation in modern history. Since economic statistics have been recorded, we've never seen this. So we're in uncharted waters at a macro level. And there's been a lot of recessions over the years and a lot of economic slowdowns. Even before our time, we can go take a look at like the Great Depression and the post-World War II recession, the post-Korean conflict recession, the Cold War ending, all these different economic downturns. None have been this acute, and none have impacted small to mid-sized businesses first. And SMBs are the customers of the channel. So unlike in the Great Recession of 08, 09, the financial services industry and the insurance industry were really what got kind of whacked first. And those are big companies. Everyone felt pain, but they got whacked. This time, it's the consumer that was put on ice. And with the consumer being put on ice, the consumer is what's driven this fantastic economic engine that we've all been lucky enough to live in the last 4 or 5 years. And the consumer being on ice is just really hurting small businesses, which hurts the customers of the channel, which hurts the channel. So it's been interesting to see. I will say, we've seen a trend in the last 15 years. I talk a lot about it at our company events, and Rich and I, we've spoken about it a number of times, about how small to mid-sized businesses are relying more and more on technology the last 20 years. We've seen, I hate to use the term, but a revolution. Simple example of that is if you asked the average small business owner in 2015 what cybersecurity was, they'd probably smile and laugh and have no idea. Now every one of them probably could tell you what ransomware is and how much they pay for cyber insurance. The world's changed real quick. And we've just exited an era. I always say in 60 days, we've transformed ourselves into a new era. We went from the era where we were using technology as a means of differentiation with small businesses. Now it's absolutely essential. And in just 60 days, small to mid-sized businesses, again, the customers of the channel, they are now reliant on technology to exist. And that is such a different paradigm. It's nuts to think about. Like I'll look back at this one. I've been keeping a journal, by the way, what's going on in the last 60 days, because we're going to look back at that. Didn't mean to curse. We're going to look back at this, 20 years from now and say, wow, I ran a company during this crazy economic times. It's kind of like, imagine if we were running a company, or we were serious politicians during the fall of the crazy times that we live in. And it's amazing. So if you think about a lot of small businesses, companies that use the channel, companies of 100 employees or less, let's take a look at healthcare. Let's take a look at a doctor's office. Television was on the 5-year horizon for most medical practitioners just 60 days ago. Today, if you're a doctor's office or an eye doctor's office or any type of healthcare professional, the only way you're generating revenue is via telemedicine today. Restaurants, I use this example a lot. I go to dinner every Sunday with my mom and dad, and we've been going to the same restaurant since I was like 5 years old. It's not a chain, it's like a local kind of restaurant. Now, the only way that business generates any revenue is from takeout, and most takeout is done online. These guys didn't have I know the guys that own this restaurant, they did not have an online presence 2 months ago. Now they have to. Those types of, every industry is like that. Look at the health and fitness industry. Orange Theory, a big franchise system here in the States of like exercise facilities. All their locations are closed. They generate revenue by having their content online. So that's a paradigm shift. And in order to deliver on that digital transformation, all of these different types of businesses, they need to have the next generation of IT. You have to be compliant. You have to have really good network availability if you're going to stream workout videos to people, you need to be, there's so many things that need to happen, and MSPs, or the channel, as we like to say, is now as important, if not more important, than electricity for these businesses. And that's happened in 60 days. It used to be just 60 days ago, people used technology to get a little bit of competitive advantage. Now, small businesses and mid-sized businesses are leveraging technology to feed their families. And that sounds so cliche, but it's so true, and it happens so fast. So
it's interesting, Fred, too, because I've had that exact same thought that, you know, as recently as a few months ago, if you were a small or mid-sized business, you found yourself in the middle of a recession, you're looking for ways to cut costs, maybe IT was one of the things that you look to cut back on, but it really as electricity and phone service. You're not in business if you don't have IT anymore. So it's going to be one of the very, very last thing. If you get to the point where you've got to cut your IT, your managed services contract, you're pretty much out of business at that point. So to that point, you know, again, you're talking to a lot of MSPs out there. One of the things that the impression I get when I speak to people like yourself is the managed services channel has shown a fair amount of resilience up to this point. I think there was a lot of reason to fear that MSPs were going to get hit very hard right now because their customers were getting hit hard. But so far, unless you know, are somebody who decided to specialize in restaurants or hotels and your particular vertical niche has really gotten hammered, so far, it appears MSPs are actually doing okay in this economy right now. Is that what you're seeing and hearing from your partners?
we are. I think a couple of things. One is this is a really bad economy. But, you know, really, really bad for everyone. I don't care what industry, what you're doing, it's really bad. So I'll say that I believe most MSPs are experiencing harder times than we had 60 days ago. That being said, Richmond, I'm with you 100%. It's light years better than just about everybody else for the reasons that you indicated. And even more. Like, it's funny, you mentioned MSPs that deal with restaurants. I spoke with one of our customers, an MSP out of Long Island a couple of days ago, and they're predominantly in hospitality, which just stinks. Very few MSPs are vertical. Usually they're local and they do, you know, different industries in their local communities. But these guys have a pretty good presence nation or up and down the East Coast in restaurant chains and in hotels and hospitality. And they're suffering, but they laid off 20% of their staff. That's it. And I was shocked. And they said, listen, everyone's gone on the restaurant side to takeout and to online. And, you know, they have to make sure that the front of the house, the order taking, and the back of the house, the kitchen, are seamless, because otherwise there's spoilage. And they went through all the restaurant terms. I never worked in a restaurant, so I understand it as a layperson. But even they were doing pretty decent. So it's everyone's suffering, but we're suffering our sector a lot less. Which is a good thing. And I think coming out of this, it's going to be a period of, I hate to use the word growth, for lack of a better word, a period of growth for IT service providers that we've never seen before, better than the last 4 or 5 years, because companies aren't going to go back. They're not going to go backwards. You know, it's not like they're going to stop doing takeout just to bring people back into the restaurant. Takeout's now added to the restaurant. Orange Theory is now going to have an entire digital business that will go and coincide with its physical go to the gym business. Doctors will do telemedicine because you can make more money doing telemedicine, and then you can have patients come in when they have to. You know, so I think business has changed. Universities will never be the same ever again. Remote learning is going to put probably a third of universities out of business, and you're going to see probably 2x that number emerging as virtual learning universities. Students will pay less, they'll get the same education, they'll have a lot less debt. I mean, the world's gonna change. And the IT service providers are gonna be right in the middle of it, not just for the small businesses, but even the mid-sized businesses that have IT. What we found here is MSPs are much better at delivering IT than a 4 or 5 person IT shop is for that, 500 person company. So the 500 person company that had to go remote and now has to adjust to this new world, they're getting left behind because their IT staff, all good people and very smart, they're not a professional IT group. The MSP is. And I've seen a tremendous amount of 100 to 1,000 person companies or endpoint moving over to MSPs that previously weren't getting them. I think the world will be very different, and IT is really driving it. It's pretty exciting.
So the world is going to be very different coming through the worst of the recession before we get to the other side of it. All of this is sort of unprecedented for most of the MSPs out there. So when you're talking to MSPs right now, and everyone's trying to kind of figure it out as we go along here, is there any kind of advice you're giving them, best practices advice, strategic advice in terms of what they should be doing now and what they should be preparing to do later on to get through this and make the most of the opportunities that emerge from it?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's the $1 million question, right? So I think there's really three things that MSPs should be aggressively thinking about. I don't think anyone should come out and adjust their strategy completely overnight. That's a recipe for disaster, because that means the execution arm of your company won't be aligned with the strategic vision. If you don't have that kind of hand in glove, that's a different set of problems. That being said, I do think that we are seeing a couple of very, very obvious trends, as obvious as day and night. One of them is the theme that we've spoken about now is IT is required, but certain parts of IT are required. Compliance, disaster recovery, properly managing networks, communication, having a hybrid work environment, mobile, work from home, work from the office, work from wherever. MSPs that don't master those will lose, because we're seeing much more willingness for small to mid-sized businesses to change their IT provider if they're not meeting their needs. And that's something that's new for MSPs. The word churn is something MSPs really haven't had to deal with in the last decade. Think about it. It's a blue water market. It wasn't a lot of churn. Software providers like Kaseya, we understand the word churn. Right? It's something, telecommunication providers, it's in our DNA. It's not very common for MSPs. They're seeing it now, and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. So making sure that their service catalog is properly aligned to what the customers want, number one. Number two, as much as it stinks to say it as a software vendor, if I was a managed service provider, I would look to reduce the cost of my software kit. There's only two ways an MSP can align their costs: reducing labor and reducing the cost of the software, reducing their COGS, the software that's used to deliver their offerings. And I think a lot of service providers have thought of themselves as technologists first and business people second. And as we all know, IT people, we all love our goodies. We love our toys and our kit. I think that service providers need to make business decisions about the platforms that they use instead of allowing the technicians to make shiny new toy decisions. And I think I think you're going to find vendors like Kaseya that offer integrated platforms at roughly 50% of the cost of having 5, 6, 7 different products from different vendors. I think those choices will have to be made. Because if they're not, the MSP's profits will go away. It's much more competitive, which is the third point. And that is making sure the technicians are as efficient as they can be, making sure that you can get more revenue per technician. So really looking at the service delivery methodology and the costs associated with it. The competition or the competitive landscape, it's not just coming from other MSPs, it's coming from more educated buyers. And those buyers, be it a dental practice, a large healthcare concern, a small university, they have to look at every dime they spend very differently. And that's a new world. And that's something I think every MSP owner and every private equity firm that owns the large MSPs need to be looking at very closely.
So Fred, we've just got a few minutes left here before we've got to go, but we're talking about how the situation we are in right now is affecting MSPs. It's obviously affecting Kaseya as well. So just in the remaining bit of time we have here, what has been the impact on Kaseya, and how have your plans maybe changed going forward as a result of this?
Well, my hair got longer. I have a scruff, and I grow facial hair like a high school adolescent, so I look kind of ridiculous. But no, from the company's perspective, we're very fortunate. First of all of us on this call are fortunate that we're in the IT space. I mean, there's a lot of people that are suffering, and it sucks. We all know people, we all have friends and family, and we're lucky. We're lucky at Kaseya because the financial model of a SaaS-based infrastructure software company is very strong. We are very, very profitable. We have a very strong balance sheet. So from a financial security perspective, to give you an idea about it, we allocated $10 million, we call it Kaseya Cares, to do direct financial assistance. We've allocated about $8.5 million of it already. So that's, our balance sheet's really strong that we can take a little over $10 million and provide direct financial assistance. The second thing that we're seeing is customers are more demanding. Their customers are demanding more, so our MSPs are demanding more. Right when this COVID thing hit in the States, it was the middle of March, in Europe, the beginning of March. The MSPs, the data we have says they had about a 200% increase in the number of tickets per customer. Of course, that flew into, that flowed into us. I think what we're going to see is more demanding customers. We're seeing our growth go from the low 30s into the mid 20s. We're extending out payment terms for customers to leverage our balance sheet. We're actually, I think, faring better than maybe some of my peers, simply for the fact that we provide a comprehensive platform that's a lot less expensive than buying individual point products from other customers, other vendors. A lot of companies, a lot of our customers, buying more of IT Complete and replacing what they're using for things like backup or other types of products that might not be with us on. So we're lucky so far. We also short MSPs as our customers. So we're not a lot of 1 and 2 person MSPs or customers of Kaseya. Not that those are bad MSPs at all. They represent the future. But we tend to have a little more mature MSPs. So we're doing have a very good geographic footprint. We're big in Latin America, we're big in North America, we're big in Europe, big in Australia market for us, believe it or not. So we're doing, I think, as well as if not better than most providers. It's a stressful time for our employees. We're all working. As you can see, I'm actually the only person in our office here. I'm an essential worker as the CEO of our company, so I guess I get to come into the office. It's very lonely. But I think we're doing okay, and it's good to be able to be kind of a rock of stability, trouble in times of uncertainty. People have, they look to the governments, they look to religious institutions, their families. Hopefully their companies can be a pillar of stability and stuff like this, and that's what we're trying to do for our folks. So we're doing okay.
That's awesome. And I hope you continue to do okay. And I hope the channel continues to remain lucky. Fred, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talk to us today. We'd love to have you back at some point in the future. For those who want to look into you a little more.
Thank you guys as well. I'm sorry, continue.
Oh, and for those who want to learn a little bit more about Kaseya, where can they go?
They go to www.kaseya.com. We'd love to have you check out our website. We're also doing a broadcast about our strategy in an economic downturn for the next several years. That'll be being broadcast over the next several days. So look forward to hearing from you. In the meantime, remember that IT people are heroes. IT are heroes. We help keep business afloat. Business keeps jobs going. Jobs keep the economy going. And we all need stuff like that these days. So thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
There is no IT in hero because then it would be pronounced heroit. But I think we can coin a new phrase there. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the show with our regular end of the show features and maybe a little bit more. So stick around for that. Thanks again to Fred Voccola from Kaseya. We will be right back. All right, welcome back to part 3 here at ChannelPro Weekly. There's a great interview segment with Fred Voccola. Thank you so much, Fred, for coming on and talking with us. Rich, lots to dissect there. How do you think that interview went?
Well, a really interesting thing about that interview. So I mentioned earlier on in the show that there was this virtual event that Kaseya did. We actually recorded that interview the day before the virtual event. We'd actually been trying to get Fred on the show for a while. That was when he was available, so we grabbed him. Unbeknownst to me, though, he was actually kind of trying out his lines. He a lot of what he said in that interview, he said again the next morning in his keynote address. So if you didn't get a chance to attend that event, having listened to this interview now, you have a pretty good sense for what he was talking about with the Kaseya partners during that online conference. And if you were at the online conference, I think a lot of what you just heard is probably going to be familiar to you. I mean, he very clearly has this sense in mind that of where the economy and the industry is going. We're in a bad place, obviously, right now economically, historically bad. But there is a rebound coming, better time. To some extent, the managed services market has proven to be more resilient, is doing better now than, for the moment at least, than a lot of people feared. But it's only going to get better later on. There's this idea that he didn't talk about in the interview, but that he did talk about during the virtual conference, of what he calls the dependence era that we're in now. We're in an era now where if you are an SMB, you simply can't do business unless you have your technology up and running, and that portends well for anyone who is in the business of supporting technology for SMBs. And the other thing is just that Fred sort of feels like the strategy that he and Kaseya have been pursuing for years now is also a pretty good fit for the situation that we unexpectedly find ourselves in here, where MSPs are going to be looking for more productivity, more efficiency. They've been building a platform that's designed to deliver that because of the economies of scale that they're able to achieve at a company the size of Kaseya and some of these other big companies like Datto and ConnectWise. They're also able to charge less for a lot of these products, and that's going to be important, at least for a little while, where you've got SMBs with very serious technology needs, but maybe less money to spend, shopping around for a different MSP, somebody cheaper. If you can come in there with a good price point and still have all the capabilities you need to support that customer well, that's going to be something that is going to be really great for you as an MSP, and therefore Fred's feeling pretty good about his competitive position for that reason. So lots of interesting stuff in that conversation there, in terms of how the existing strategy at Kaseya kind of dovetails with the historical moment we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was a great interview, and hopefully we'll get Fred back on in the future. He's a really nice guy for being CEO of such a large company.
Although we almost came to blows, Matt. I'll tell this story a little bit. So Matt had to jump off really quickly at the end of that interview, but Fred and I kind of stayed on for a few minutes, and we're just catching up quickly. And he's looking behind me, and this will make more sense to people watching on video than audio, but he's looking behind me and says, is that a Yankees cap you've got there? Is that a New York Yankees? He grew up in New Jersey, but he is a Red Sox fan, and Red Sox fans, Yankees fan. It got ugly. What can I tell you?
Yeah, it was a little shorter than we would have hoped for. We ended up kind of starting late, and I had an absolute hard stop at a particular time, and I'm like, I gotta go, So, but we'll get him back on. We'll have a little bit more of a deep dive with him down the road, I'm sure. So, Michael, again, we're still here with Michael Goldstein, President and CEO of LAN Infotech. We are going to play a game with you that we call 5 Questions. Now, how does 5 Questions work? We are going, Rich and I, off the top of our heads, that's what makes this fun and interesting, is that off the top of our heads, we will come up with 5 questions to ask you. It can be about anything and everything, so you never know. It's just whatever pops up in here, and we'll have a little bit of fun. Y'all ready? All right. He's shaking his head. He's ready. Okay. I will take the first question this time, Rich. First question is if you were going to build the ultimate party sub, what would be on it?
Oh, wow. You know what? Down here in Florida, the Publix chain, we call it the ultimate sub. It's roast beef, ham, and turkey. Got to have Swiss on that, hot peppers, mayo. That's the killer. That's my tailgating sub for all the time.
That sounds like a good meaty, hearty sub. Now, what kind of bread do you use for that?
You know what? They have this sunflower seed bread. Believe it or not, it sounds kind of crazy. It is unbelievable. It is great. But you know what?
Really?
Normal white Italian works also.
I've never had sunflower seed bread. That does sound kind of weird.
The first time I got it by mistake, I'm sitting out there at a Dolphin game, and I pull it out in the tailgate. I'm like, what the heck is this? It was amazing. But sunflower seed bread.
Interesting stuff. All right, Rich, question number 2 to you.
Well, you've alluded to this, Michael. In ordinary times, we cross paths in person at various events all the time. And in fact, it occurred to me early in this episode. I was trying to think back, when did I meet Michael? And I remember, I distinctly remember, I met you at a Microsoft Partner Conference in Toronto. It's got to be like 6 or 7 years ago. You were there with your wife. Gorgeous weather. We were sitting outside somewhere. So, I mean, you travel normally quite a bit. Is there a favorite destination city, like a conference city to go to that you especially like?
You hit on it, because I really did like Toronto. I really love going there. Great city, easy to get around. And multiple times when I went up to Toronto, flying to Buffalo, go to see Niagara Falls first, or return out of there. But Toronto's been one of my favorites. And it was a Microsoft partner event. I remember that. It was great.
Yeah.
All right, interesting. I'll take question 3, and we'll stay on the Toronto line, actually, because there's a good chance that our family vacation is going to get canceled in August. And we are thinking about driving to Toronto and seeing Niagara Falls and poking around there. Name a restaurant or something you saw in Toronto that we should go to.
You know what? I did one of those. It sounds kind of corny, and it's something that I do all the time. I did one of those double-decker tour, hop on, hop off rides. And it was amazing, because I didn't know that there was some type of castle estate outside of Toronto. It also gave us a boat ride that gave us around. I always try to do that, because there's always fun facts when you hop on and hop off on that. It was amazing. And if you do go to Niagara Falls, pay the extra price and stay on one of those rooms that actually overlooks the falls. I mean, 7 by 24, you get up and you're looking at that. I just couldn't get enough out of it.
Excellent. All right. Rich, question number 4 to you.
And it's a totally random one, just popped into my head. Favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving. I'm a big turkey. I love getting, I grew up in New York. I remember going to those days of the Thanksgiving Day parade. And even to this today, I'm the turkey cook that goes out there. My son bought his first house about a year and a half ago, and I still had to cook the turkey and bring it over. But get up in the morning, watch that Thanksgiving Day parade, the dog show, and then 12 hours of football. How could you go wrong?
Well, that's a lot of football in one
One
day. All right, Rich, I took question number 1, so I will give you question number 5.
Or did I just do? Oh, okay.
You were question number 4.
I just did question 4, so I get one more?
You get one more.
Gosh, let's see. Well, so, I mean, when I am next coming to your neck of the woods, what is the really fun, awesome thing to do that people don't know about, don't think, so like Disneyland and all that kind of stuff that's in South Florida, we all kind of know about. What's a really great thing in your part of the state that maybe I should think about and wouldn't necessarily know about?
Go to Delray Beach. You go out there, that whole strip on Atlantic Avenue, people overlook that. They come in there and they're like, oh, I have to stay in Miami. Maybe I'm a South Beach person. Have to go to Fort Lauderdale, go on Las Olas. That hidden gem is Delray Beach. Staying right on the beach up there, having Atlantic Avenue to go out and eat and drink and wander around by. It's one of those great little places.
All right, awesome. Well, there's 5 questions with Michael Goldstein. Hopefully when we get you back sometime in the future, we'll come up with 5 more questions to pick your brain about.
And another party sub.
And we'll get a party sub, and we'll make it into a big event with roast beef and ham and turkey and Swiss, and what else was it?
Jalapenos.
Oh, jalapeno.
Bread.
Jalapeno. So you said hot peppers. See, I'm from the Chicago area, so when I hear hot peppers, I just assume jardinara. It's probably not a thing down there for you, is it?
I've had it many a times, but if you walked into one of those sub shops and that aren't specialty and said that, they give you the little look like, what?
Yeah, there is nothing like Jardinara. It is the best substance on the planet. I would put it on my Cheerios if my wife wouldn't look at me funny. All right, we're gonna move on. Thanks for playing that. So for those who have been watching for a while, and Michael, you may not know this, but I have a vast assortment of technology products that I have collected over the years, mostly because I have a hard time throwing anything away that takes batteries, plugs in, has a screen, or buttons. And not like shirt buttons, I mean like, tech buttons. So I call it a hobby. My wife calls it a serious problem in our marriage. Either way, it's fun for all you out there to see and hear about some of these interesting things. Now we're on episode 147, and funny enough, Rich and I were talking a little earlier. I am running out of interesting things to talk about. I got a few more shows in me, I think, but at some point we might have to switch this from actually talking about things that I actually have here, and me just kind of picking out some old historic products to talk about that were significant or influential in some way. But I mean, I've got a lot of consumer stuff, Rich, but I don't know if everybody wants to see a lot of consumer-y kind of things. But I got a fun one. Hopefully I haven't talked about it in the past. I look back in the notes. I didn't see it in there. So there has always been a need, especially in business, to record conversations, right? And in the modern day, where we use a lot of video conferencing or Teams or Zoom, I mean, that capability is just built right into the software. So it makes it very easy. And if you're using a lot of VoIP services now too, well, it's actually also pretty easy to record conversations in the most part. And there's a lot of reasons why you'd want to record conversations. It's not always, because you're trying to be all spy-y or whatever, but it's because you want to post it on the internet or look back and make sure that if you made promises or that someone made promises to you, that you have a reference of that. There are lots of reasons. Michael, I'm sure that over the course of your business, you've had to record tons of phone calls for various reasons.
Definitely. And things that I have to remember. Didn't want to write it down on that little Post-it. Absolutely,
right. Lots of reasons. So, but of course, Michael, as you've gone through the business in the years, over 30 years, recording a phone call wasn't always the easiest thing in the world to do. It required gear, right?
Definitely.
So, so I have one of those devices I got years and years and years and years ago, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. I'm trying to find a date on it. They were never very good at dating stuff back then, but this is the Radio Shack voice-activated telephone recording control.
Oh my God.
I've actually got two. This is actually a newer version. The original one that I had it looked very similar to this one, but it eventually broke. This thing was super, super duper handy. And this one did a couple things. Not only did it allow you to record a phone call, but you would basically plug this into the phone, to any phone jack that was on that system. It didn't actually have to interface with the phone, which was kind of nice. You could just plug it into a phone jack, or you could, set up one of those little phone tees or whatever. And then that would go there. And then these two cables would get plugged into basically a cassette recorder. But what I liked about this one is that I actually didn't have to set it up every time I wanted to record something. This one would basically know when the phone line was picked up and there was a sensitivity level for that, or when voices were talking, and it would automatically start the recorder for you. So that you turn on the recorder, hit it in mode, and then this little smaller jack was what would send over the signal, and it would basically record and stop recording based on activity on the line. Very, very handy, very useful. You could, and there was even this button that says select A and B. To this day, I have no idea what that little rocker switch does. And it's not in the manual that I could find anyway. I really tried to look it up. I have no idea what it does. But I always put it on A because A is better than B. That's what I'm going to go with. The few things that I didn't like about this one, it did take batteries, and it wasn't a battery hog. It took 4 AA's. And it would last quite a long time, even being on all the time. But the recorder could be set up to be like an AC plug-in recorder. So it was a fairly efficient system, but really easy to use and pretty simple. And there were other different kinds too, Michael. I don't know what kind you used back in the day, but there were kinds where you'd kind of plug it in between the handset, like the cord of the handset on a receiver. Yep, and then that would kind of plug in. I always found those to work okay, but not the greatest. There were also some kinds that it was like a little microphone that you like stuck to the side of the receiver. So you'd have the phone here and you'd plug it in up here. and it would then pick up the sound from the inside of the earpiece. And those really did not work very well. And then, of course, like your voice wasn't always very good. Where the recordings on this one was nice and clean as analog telephone voice quality gets. But your voice and their voice was always very, very equally clear and easy to use. And on cassette tapes to mail to your podcast listeners, as Rich listened to podcasts back in the day on cassette tapes, that they would mail them. So that's the voice-activated telephone recording control. Rich, did you ever have anything like that, or any need to? You're an interviewer, so I would assume you had something.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what's so funny about this to me is you're describing this as a museum piece. This technology plays a role in my life today. Like right now on my desk, it's not the exact model, but I have a Radio Shack recording thing plugged into my phone, and all week long I plug my little digital recording device into that and record interviews that way, and that way I can send stuff out for transcription, which is great. In fact, I like that technology so much that I have one in my suitcase that I just take with me on the road, so that I don't have to kind of like keep packing and unpacking it. But I've used this thing in hotel rooms to record interviews that I needed to do with somebody over the phone when I happened to be out of town. These days, now that everybody is on Teams and Zoom, and it's become easier to record, I'm doing more of that. But honestly, in a lot of times, it's easier to use the Radio Shack thing because you get on a Teams call, everybody turns on their camera. At the end of the interview, you've got 300 megabytes, of data that you now have to download, and you can't send that file off to get transcribed. So I have to kind of run it through this converter process to turn it into audio only. I prefer the old-fashioned Radio Shack technology, frankly.
It's interesting. So one thing I do like about Zoom is that when you record with Zoom, they give you a separate audio file that doesn't have the video, which is really, really handy. I wish Teams had a way to do that. But yeah, that doesn't necessarily say that that stuff like this is out of date or a relic. I would agree with you. I don't use this anywhere near as much as I used to. On occasion, you get to someone who like insists on talking on the phone. But I find it easier to use this and just record it and have the file and be done. But there's absolutely still a need for this. And this technology, I could throw 4 AA batteries, plug it into my wall, and I actually still have a house phone, which is kind of, an unusual thing to have. But then you get into like, well, a lot of people don't even have house phones anymore. So there's other solutions to record from cell phones and things of that nature.
Yep. To just have a Radio Shack to walk into.
Yeah, I know. Even just just seeing Radio Shack, it's already a relic. Look at that. Those are the days. So, but that was then, and even though what was then still works today, given that you still have an analog phone. You have a VoIP phone, but like an analog, interface to that phone. There is still a need for this kind of stuff today, and they still make telephone recorders. I went out and I looked for a couple, and I found one that looked really neat to me. Way more expensive than what I had spent on this thing. And I'm going to pull up the page here, and I'll put it on the screen for those who are watching. For those who are not watching, it's a small black box that describes practically every technology product ever. This is by Recorder Gear. I can't say I've actually used this particular product, but if I was going to go and buy a new landline phone call recorder, of course I'm going to be drawn to the one that has lots of buttons and an LCD screen, because that's how I roll. Okay. But it's a black box. It's got various things on it. There's a screen on it, so it must record digitally. So it's kind of like a built-in digital recorder. On the side, there is jacks for I believe this is a handset interruption. So you plug the handset from your corded IP phone into the side of the recorder and then back out to the handset.
I like how it says how to make your purchase 100% discreet.
Yeah, so this is this is a company that kind of sells spy gear kind of stuff, but there's absolutely there's a market for that kind of thing. Of course, if you're recording people's phone calls without their knowledge, you are probably in violation of some state laws. So review state law before you use something like this. But there's still a business need for this, and it looks like you can play back right on this device. I would imagine there's a way to get the files off of it and put it into a computer for use. Yeah, mic phone is the source. So you can also, there's a built-in microphone right on it, so you can just talk at it like a recorder. And then there's expandable memory. It's Mac and Windows compatible, so there's a way to get the files off of it. So yeah, it looked cool. Michael, what do you think? Would that be the one you would go for?
The make it 100% discrete piece there in that $160 price range.
Yeah, $159, not the cheapest thing, but it is the digital recorder part of it too. So it's kind of like everything, and there's a speaker on it, and you can play back, and it's got a DC jack, which is nice, and a mini USB. That's how you connect it to the PC. So it's kind of like everything, Rich, that you would kind of have to do in separate pieces, all rolled into one. So how many do you want? Can I order you one?
Well, the thing is, I've got a landline solution that I like, as I said, but if you know of a great cell phone recording option that does not involve three-way calling, tell me about it. Because I used to have, I still on my phone, this app that I would use to record cell phone interviews. And it was one of these things where you call the person you're going to interview, you say, okay, I'm going to put you on hold for a minute. You conference in their recording line, and it's like a three-way call. Used to work beautifully, and it just stopped. And it's not just this app. I tried another app that uses the same kind of approach. That something to do, I think, with Verizon. It just can't handle this kind of connection anymore. The call just sort of falls apart. So now I'm on the hunt. I got to find some way to record conversations on the cell phone. So if you know anything, let me know.
I do. Well, if you want it to be 100% discreet, Recorder Gear here also sells the PR200 Bluetooth cell phone and audio recorder. It records both cell phone calls and functions as a regular handheld digital voice recorder, so it's kind of both. But it wirelessly records cell phone calls, 4 gigs of memory, 144-hour capacity, functional USB flash drive, so you plug it in after that, and that's how you do it. So, Rich, I'll send you a link to this. This might be exactly what you're looking for.
Thank you. I'm going to check that out. Is it in that same 160-ish kind of price range? Or?
Rich, it's a deal and a half, $119 through the Recorder Gear website. I am willing to bet that if we were to look on Amazon or somewhere out into the retail world, it might even be less expensive. In fact, it's $109 right now on Amazon, Rich. I'll send you the link.
Thank you.
Shortly. See,
very cool.
Solving problems with technology right here live on the air.
Out of the museum.
and out of the museum. So yes, that's my museum pick, the old Radio Shack landline telephone recorder. My museum pick, this Recorder Gear one that basically is the same thing, except it's got a screen, and screens make everything better. So that's going to wrap it up. Rich, if you were to look in the past and think of things that happened that we would want to know about, you are usually very good at telling us that. And then you try to predict the future. He does this every show, and he kind of puts his little robes on with the big hat and the crystal ball, and he looks kind of like, a wizard or a seer that is looking into the future. And, that's, you're right 25% of the time, maybe.
The looking up the stuff from the past, though, that's really easy, and anyone can mimic the technique that I use there, which is just to go to channelpronetwork.com every Friday and look for the In Case You Missed It post, contributed weekly by our own James Gaskin, where he rounds up news from the week that was. This week he's going to be talking a little bit about those alliance agreements that Microsoft announced this week with Workday and Docker, which are kind of interesting. Cisco came out with a whole new line of small business solutions that also looks pretty interesting. Last week, you might recall James talked a little bit about a failed effort, a well-intentioned but failed effort by a Korean baseball team to compensate for all those empty seats in the stadiums now as play kind of resumes in Asia. We've got another story for you this week about an attempt in Japan to kind of compensate for the fact that there's nobody in the stadium anymore. That doesn't mean you can't have rude comments from people in the stadium. They're just going to have to come in remotely, and you can read a little bit more about the ingenious technology used to do exactly that. Looking ahead to next week, we were talking about, virtual events. So next week, Cisco is doing its Cisco Live conference online. And SAP is doing its Global Partner Summit online. So we will have news from both of those companies coming up next week.
Sounds like something to look forward to. And of course, next week we'll have ChannelPro Weekly episode 148 ready. Any hints on what's going to be in episode 148, Rich?
Not off the top of my head, although I could look that up. But
and we also are barreling forward to episode 150. And Rich and I are trying to think of kind of a special episode. Get a bunch of people on and talk about some different things. So we'll let you know as we get a little closer to that, what that plan is going to be. But we want to do something a little different for episode 150 to celebrate the fact that we've got 150 of these done. Which is also, I don't know if we want to talk about it here or not, but we're also going to be doing a special appearance. ChannelPro Weekly will be appearing in our July event. Is that true?
It is. Now, the special guest star is still TBD at this point, but we're kind of looking ahead to a conference that we're doing for partners in the Raleigh, North Carolina area coming up in July, and we were thinking, you know what, let's build one of these ChannelPro Weekly interviews into that show, and so that we will take whatever audio we grab for the show, and we'll use it, or grab for the Raleigh event, we'll use it in this show as well.
Yep, so you all get to do that. But if you're in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, anywhere in that general vicinity, go and register for that event. And you won't regret it. So go and check that out. Events.channelpronetwork.com is where you can do that. So as far as online, the website is channelpronetwork.com. That's where you should point your web browser each and every day. We've got news, white papers, articles, stories, interviews, podcasts, all kinds of stuff that is geared to help you grow your business online all day, every day. Make it your homepage. Go there all the time and follow those stories as they come out. We're on all of the social networks. We're on LinkedIn, ChannelPro Network there. We're at ChannelPro SMB on Twitter. We're on Facebook as well. ChannelPro Network there. Just search, you'll find us pretty much everywhere you go. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Matt Whitlock. Rich, you are?
At Rich Free.
And of course, for ChannelPro Weekly, go and subscribe. That's the best thing to do. Subscribe to ChannelPro Weekly. We're on all of the different audio podcast places. We're in Google Podcasts, iTunes Podcasts. We're in Spotify. We're in Stitcher. If you go, please leave us a good rating. That's always very helpful. But then once you subscribe, they just, boom, all of the new episodes as they come out will just be magically downloaded to your device, and you can have them there for when you are able to leave the house again. But of course, if you're still stuck at home and you just want to watch, we're on YouTube. Subscribe to us there, hit the red button and the bell, and then you'll get notifications when we have new episodes here on YouTube to watch, and you can see our bright, smiley faces. Our special guest this week was Michael Goldstein, our guest host. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here with us today. Where can people contact you? How can they follow you? Where they go to learn more about you?
So on Twitter, at LAN Infotech. LANinfotech.com for our website. You can look for me on LinkedIn and Michael Goldstein. We're putting active posts that are up there, community type posts, and just love to network with our peers as well as vendors.
Awesome. Well, hopefully everybody reaches out to you there, and I hope, thank you again for being on with this. I hope you had a good time.
I had a great time. This was interesting. Usually when I'm broadcasting myself, I'm just talking to myself. This is great having a couple of sidekicks.
Absolutely. I will be your sidekick anytime, Michael. I had a lot of fun, and it was great having you here. Everyone, Michael Goldstein, President and CEO of LAN Infotech. And that is going to wrap up episode 147. We will see you all next week. Goodbye.